again,
Hey,
baseball romantics. Jason with you, coming to you as we are about to begin the league championship series for Major League Baseball. And as usual, I'm joined by my comrade Nico, and we're down one tonight. Bruce may join us later, but if not, we will roll with this duo. Good to talk to everybody again. We haven't been with you since the wild card round, so we're going to catch up, look back at what's happened since the wild card round, and look ahead to the league championship series. As we record this, we're about 40 minutes away from game one of the ALCS, and we will definitely discuss that series coming up too. So, Nico, welcome. Good to have you back here and talking some ball.
Yes, sir, Jason. We got the final four, man. We got four teams left, and I can't say that too many people predicted this. At least three out of the four. I know we knew LA would be here, but we weren't so sure about Milwaukee, Seattle, and Toronto. So I'm happy to see it. Something different.
It is, and you're right. I don't remember all of our picks. I know I had Philadelphia and Texas in the World Series, so shoot me. That's not even close. And I would not have had probably Milwaukee for sure, and not Seattle. I did think Toronto was going to be a dark horse playoff team since the spring, but I never imagined they would win the East and then advance this far. So all that being said, let's look back to the wild card round real quick and just kind of give our thoughts on how things went that those first series. We'll start in the National League. I don't think it was any big surprise. The Dodgers swept the Reds in 2 games, Nico, and then of course the Cubs went 3 with the Padres. So, again, no surprise there either way. I thought the Dodgers would do that, and then the Padres Cubs I thought would be a pretty good series, and it was okay. And the Cubs get out of there. So your thoughts real quick on the National League wild card.
Yeah, with LA and Cincinnati, it's kind of exactly what we thought it would be. Cincinnati would have to come in and play perfect baseball to hang with the Dodgers. And as you saw in the first 2 games, the Dodgers got the early lead. They held on to it. They kind of left the back door open for the latter half of the innings. The Reds made it interesting, but, what we envisioned happened. And the Dodgers marched on. With the Cubs and the Padres, like we talked about on our last show, it was a very tough series to pick because I think both of us liked both teams a lot, and we leaned Chicago because of the home field advantage, even though it doesn't necessarily matter too much in baseball, but there's just something about playing home games in Wrigley. Yeah. And I thought that the Cubs just fed off of that atmosphere in Chicago. And obviously Chicago went on to play Milwaukee, which we'll get to in a moment. And that was a great series. But a good season for Chicago, Jason. I think they're on the right trajectory. We'll see what they do in the offseason as far as Kyle Tucker and free agency. But I think Chicago is going to be here for the next couple of years at least.
Yeah, it should be very interesting to see going forward. It's just baseball seems to be a little better when you got postseason baseball being played at Wrigley. So hopefully the Cubs can continue to do that. So, yes, they did advance to face the Brewers. Let's switch over to American League. We'll come back do the LDSs. But American League wild card, we had the AL Central Championship Series, right? Detroit and Cleveland, they battled. We say battled. Detroit kind of limped down to the wire in the regular season, ended up playing Cleveland in the wild card series. But Detroit comes out on top. So the Tigers, who, back in June, July, we were looking at that team as maybe World Series favorites, the way they were playing, and definitely kind of slowed their way down, but they win this series. They take out the Guardians, who've been super hot. And then in the other series, of course, the classic rivalry, Yankees, Red Sox. And I believe the Yankees were the first team in this new format, which is only a few years old, but to lose the first game and come back and win the wild card series. So your thoughts overall on those 2 series?
Yeah, I picked Detroit and the Yankees. I'm 6 for 7 on my picks thus far. 7 for 8, I'm sorry, on the playoffs.
Killing it.
Yeah, I know. I know. I should have put a couple bucks on it, maybe next time. But yeah, I liked Detroit, Jason, because obviously the Skubal factor, like we saw against the Mariners, which we'll get to in a bit. I just like Detroit's trajectory throughout the whole season. I still thought they were a better team than Cleveland. And when you have Skubal going out there for game 1, like you saw him do a couple nights ago in Seattle, the guy's going to give you a world-class start, ton of strikeouts. I mean, he's an absolute monster for Detroit. And I leaned on, the managerial advantage too. I'm a big fan of A.J. Hinch. He's one of the best managers in baseball. I think he proved that in this postseason, even though they fell short to Seattle. So I wasn't surprised there. Cleveland, great comeback, great story. guard ball. That's the narrative in Cleveland, right? They play guard ball. They try to do all the little things and squeeze every run in they possibly can. It's only going to get you so far. Cleveland needs to go out there and they need to bolster that offense. I mean, it's just an anemic offense for Cleveland, but it was a great season for them. And then in the other, New York and Boston, I picked the Yankees just because I thought they were a better team. They obviously were home. It was a really good series. I would have probably picked Boston if Roman Anthony was healthy, but he wasn't. And then obviously they had the injury to Lucas Giolito, so they had to start the young kid in Game 3. I thought the Red Sox just didn't have enough to beat the Yankees. They fought, and they put up a good fight. And I thought the better team won, and they did. I think Boston's going to be a real threat next season. They've got a really nice club they're putting together out there. Great job by Alex Cora to weather the storm, and Boston have a really nice season.
Yeah, absolutely. I also picked the Yankees, but I picked the Guardians. They were just on such a roll. Scooble, by the way, just to throw this out there, Tariq Scooble, 3 starts, 1-0 with a 1.74 ERA and a .68 WHIP. Nico, .68, and he only got one win out of 3 starts. Struck out 36 batters in 20 and 2/3 innings. Just ridiculous. He's going to get his second straight Cy Young, obviously, in the American League. Unfortunately, he did not always get the run support in this postseason. So we'll transition. Let's just stay in the American League. We'll transition right into that Detroit, Seattle, LDS, and Scooble, of course, part of the story. But Seattle, I thought was very scrappy. I thought there was I thought there was a lot of pressure on Seattle in this series because they're still the team that hasn't been to the World Series. They've got a potential MVP, definitely an MVP candidate on their team who's had a monster season. They solved some of their hitting issues we've talked about the last couple of years. They had the home field advantage. Everything seemed Seattle, and then we have this just amazing finish to that series. Being not on the East Coast but in Central Time, that was a late. Me and the wife were staying up and watching it, being on every pitch. We're not Mariners or Tiger fans, but it was just great baseball. So, your thoughts overall, especially as somebody who pulls for the Mariners, just how was that series, and from your perspective, and just give us your thoughts.
Well, obviously Detroit won Game 1, if you can recall, and then Seattle went on to win Game 2 and 3, and then the bats came alive in Game 4 for Detroit, which forced that Game 5. I think that the Tigers were really gritty. They obviously ended the season off in a really bad way, but I think their postseason was very impressive. I think everybody left them for dead, once they came into October. So you got to give them credit. I mean, they came back and, they were one win away from getting to the championship league series, and signed Scooble. Extend him now. Don't wait till after next season for Detroit. I mean, they extend that man, eat that contract, because he is worth the every penny. And he truly cares. If you watch him pitch, man, you can see him. He's putting everything he's got into the game. Really, just like he's like an anomaly. He really is in today's game. But yeah, for the Mariners, man, it's been a long time, and you can just see in that fan base. If you look at the fans, I mean, they are just on edge. And I don't think a single fan sat down for that entire game, as far as at least in the first section of the ballpark.
Absolutely.
But one thing with the Mariners, Jason, I think they outlegged Detroit. I think because they're a better team. I think they have more of a complete offense. I think they have more pitching. But for the Mariners, I think there's so much. Again, we don't use the word pressure when it comes to Seattle, but there's so much pressure to win because they've never won. They're starving for that opportunity to advance and go on a deep playoff run. So a lot of guys in that lineup, if you watched, and like we all did, just very overly aggressive. Even Cal Raleigh. Just a lot of these guys are just trying so hard to put the ball in the seats. They got to be more disciplined. They have to, remember that, one big swing is not going to win the game. And, they were fortunate to come away with that Game 5 victory. I mean, I'm out here in the East Coast, and got to the point where I was like, man, is this game ever going to end? And you got the starters pitching for Detroit, you got starters pitching for Seattle in the 13th and 14th and 15th inning, and finally they're able. Polanco was able to put one through the infield, and you can just feel that whole sigh of relief for that entire Mariner fan base out there in Seattle. So I think for Seattle, it's the first step for them. I think they have huge aspirations here to go on. Obviously, they got a big test ahead of them starting in about a half an hour or so. But again, look, the pieces are there, Jason. I mean, they've got the pitching. The lineup is as good as it's been in probably 20, 25 years. So,
Yeah.
very impressive victory there in Game 5.
Yeah. Shout out to the almost career minor leaguer. Rivas was his name. The guy coming.
Yeah.
It's the tying RBI there in the 7th. So that whole game, I think, summarizes the reason we are romantic about baseball. Is it's just, and to your point, the best part of that was watching the emotion on the fans' faces. The camera crew did a great job of capturing those moments. People are crying in the stands, when they tied the game. I mean, it was fantastic. I've been in person at playoff games for my team, and it is not that fun. I got to tell you, it's bad enough on TV, but in person, it's just like this ratcheted up. There's so much emotion in the ballpark, and I've been there, and I those folks suffered a little bit, but it ended well for Seattle, so I'm super happy to see that, even if it took to the wee hours of the morning. In the other series, me and you were talking about this off camera. We talked a little bit about this series, but the Yankees Blue Jays battle of the NL East. The Blue Jays are just that team that I think a lot of people weren't taking seriously, even when they went on a run midsummer, held off the Yankees down to the last day to win the East. So they got home field advantage, which may have been a big deal. The Blue Jays have been super good at home this year. They get off to a 2-0 start. Yankees get a game back at Yankee Stadium, and then the Jays just shut them down in Game 4. So I picked the Yankees as much to the chagrin of a lot of Blue Jays fans on our page, but I have believed in the Blue Jays all season as far as a playoff team. Here they are, the favorites now, I guess, in the ALCS. I haven't seen the Vegas odds. I imagine they're the favorites. So your thoughts, Yankees, Blue Jays?
Yeah, I'm going to gladly eat some Blue Jays crow today to my friends up in Ontario, Canada, just about 5 hours north of me, Jason.
Yeah.
I know they beat us up on the page pretty good, but hey, look, I just picked the series. It was no shade on Toronto. I just thought the Yankees were going to get by.
Yeah.
I think again, coming into this series, we didn't know what to expect with Toronto. Obviously they were a really good team throughout the whole course of the season. Bo Bichette was not available for this series against the Yankees, and look, they just went out there and beat them. It's really that simple. They pitched better, they hit better, their bullpen was better, and the thing that stuck out the most to me with Toronto, those guys are just putting the ball in play. I mean, there's so much pressure in playoff baseball to just put the ball in play, put up competitive at bats, right? Yeah. Every pitch, the magnitude of every moment in playoff baseball, you can feel it just watching the game at home.
Yep.
And this is cliche, but I know all the Yankee fans are frustrated and they're ticked off. They haven't won a World Series since 2009, and it's another winter of what went wrong with the New York Yankees. And I got to be honest with you, I just don't know if they have that. I mean, I don't know if I know they don't have that old sort of moxie that they used to have back in the late 90s and the early 2000s, where winning was just, they were built for it. Those guys, it just was a different era. It was a different time. And, year in and year out, the Yankees seemingly fall short, whether it's the World Series like last year or, divisional series or ALCS. They're falling short too often. And I'm not sure what the answer is. I don't know if it's an Aaron Boone problem or it's a Brian Cashman problem or it's an ownership problem. But, this is a long time now for a historic franchise to not, raise the trophy. And they're wasting, like we talked about before the show, Jason, they're wasting a great player's career. But again, I don't want to, I don't think Aaron Judge's career is defined by his playoff titles. I mean, he had a great series. Obviously, I think he batted like 500 or something around that.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm not sure what the Yankees' answers are. I know Bruce, our other comrade on our show, is a big fan of Aaron Boone and what can happen there. So, but with Toronto, hey, look, they're reminding me a lot of the 2019 Nationals a little bit. Kind of a team that nobody expected. They hadn't won anything before. I know the Nationals were an expansion team, but Toronto hasn't won since 1993. So it's hard to pick a team when they haven't done it type of thing. And that goes with Seattle as well. So it's just kind of great that they're meeting now, Toronto, Seattle, in the American League Championship Series. I think two great fan bases going at it here. And look, I think Seattle matches up really well with them. I think, no shade on Detroit, but I think Seattle and Toronto are pretty evenly matched.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it should be a good series. Seattle obviously at a little disadvantage starting off the series, and we'll get into that just because they had to play Friday night, turn around and play game one tonight. Real quick though, I did want to say that Toronto, by the way, scored the most runs in the postseason so far with 34 runs. Second is the Dodgers at 31, but the Dodgers have played two more games than the Jays. So the Jays have definitely scored some runs, and they are hitting 338 as a team, which is also the best in the postseason. They're putting the bat on the ball, like you said. Kind of a throwback kind of team. They're not just bashing home runs; they're putting the ball in play. And you hit the nail on the head. In the postseason, putting the ball in play, getting on base. I mean, in the postseason, fans cheer a single like it's a home run. It's like everything matters. Just ask, the poor guy from Philly, the pitcher, right? Every
Yeah.
single moment matters, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But let's talk about it now. Let's talk. Let me say this real quick about the Yankees, though. Real quick, two things actually. You talked about Aaron Judge's postseason performance. We were talking about Vladdy's postseason performance before we started recording. He's off to a hot start. He's batting 529. That's only 17 at bats. These postseason stats are always pretty small sample sizes. Even if you get to the World Series, you're not getting a huge sample size. So, yes, Aaron Judge has come up rather small in his postseason so far. He did have a good one this year. And, of course, ironically, the Yankees don't advance. I think it's just really hard and really unfair to judge a player on their postseason success. Judge has obviously proven to be one of the best players in baseball, having an incredible career. Probably going to get another MVP award, although I think there's a strong case for Cal Raleigh. And then with the Yankees, it's hard to win a World Series, especially nowadays. We've added on, two more layers of playoffs potentially. The Yankees had to play in the wild card series. It's hard. It's not easy to win a World Series. The Dodgers, until they got if you count the COVID World Series, which I know they do, and that's fine, it was 1988 since the Dodgers had won one, and they're one of the major franchises in baseball history. The Cardinals now have gone a good while without really being a World Series contender. So all that to say, I'm not defending the Yankees. I'm no Yankees fan. I'm just, it's hard. It's hard to win a World Series. So let's talk NL. Phillies, Dodgers. The matchup I think we all thought we were going to see all season, whether it was LDS or LCS. Me and Bruce were really on the Phillies bandwagon coming into this. You've been on the Dodgers the whole time. I just thought this was the Phillies' year, man. I thought with that core, Schwarber bashing, you get them into quote unquote red October at the bank. I just thought they were set up for this thing. I do wonder if they'd had Zach Wheeler. At least maybe this thing would have gone another game. But the Dodgers are the Dodgers. They're the defending champs, and somebody's gonna have to knock them out. And it was not the Phillies' year to do that. So, your thoughts on that series?
Yeah, I think that's a series that we all had circled on the calendars. We all knew it was going to happen eventually, whether it was the DS or the CS. And, I've been sort of, I don't know, pessimistic on the Phillies all season. The reason is because I look at, recent history, they've kind of let us down, in 24, 23, and 22. But again, they fall short, and I think a lot of it had to do with some of those guys in the middle of that order. They didn't hit in the big spots. I'm talking Schwarber, Harper, Alec Boehm. It was tough not having Zach Wheeler, but I think like Christopher Sanchez and Luzardo. I mean, those guys are. I mean, let's be honest, they're nasty.
Yeah.
They are just awesome starting pitchers. I think this goes with what you just said, Jason. There's just the little things. I think what the Dodgers they're showing us and what they're doing is they're doing all the little things right. The Dodgers, they're running out. They're running the first. They're doing all these little things right. They're showing you, how difficult they're going to be to beat them. You're going to have to beat them. They're not going to give you a game. And you know, as far as the game four blunder there at the end from Kirkering, it's obviously crushing. And you feel for him in that moment because he's a human being. He
Absolutely.
should have made the play. Obviously, we all know that he should have went to first base. But like we talked about, the magnitude of the moment, he got lost in the moment, and that didn't it lost him the game. But at the same time, 2 runs is not going to beat the Dodgers on most nights,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I think for Philly, it's you feel for them, you feel for that group because I think like we hammer the Yankees. Well, not so much us here on the podcast, but the Phillies from 22 to 25 had a great team.
Yeah.
They've had great teams, and they've fallen short. And like you said, it's hard to win a World Series. And you're right. And with the expanded playoff format, it's very challenging. But they fell short in this little run they went on, and you feel for those guys. You feel for the Harpers and the Turners and the JT Realmuto. I'm a big fan of his. I've always been a fan of Realmuto since he was in Miami. It was just a game of inches, man. I think the Dodgers just a little bit more throughout that series, and
Yeah.
they march on and they're showing you that they still are the class of baseball despite their underwhelming regular season, and they just have so much depth. Their pitching staff and their lineup, and Will Smith hasn't even played. They're going to be a tough out, but you know what? I do think they are beatable. I've seen some vulnerabilities in the first 2 series with LA that I think that could, you could beat them. I think they're not unbeatable, so to speak. But
Yeah.
tough for Philly, man. I don't know where they go from here. They got a couple of free agents like Schwarber, Real Muto. Obviously, Wheeler's going to come back from his injury, but it's unfortunate because I'm such a fan of those players. But
Yeah.
I thought the Dodgers would advance, and here they are.
Yeah, I said this at some point back in the summer on one of our episodes about the Phillies. I really think what I said was if they don't get it done this season, and now they haven't, they're going to kick themselves forever being up on the Diamondbacks at home with 2 chances to win that series and go to the World Series. I don't know if they would have beaten Texas. The Rangers were kind of that Cinderella, that special team that season, but they could have. I think the Phillies could have won that World Series. And up with 2 games, you just got to win one of them at home in the bank where it's crazy and they couldn't get it done. That's going to haunt them for a long time. As far as the guy, Kirkring, just a panic moment. Obviously, I can't say what I would have done in the situation. I'm no Major League Baseball player, so but man, as a pro, you practice those things. You've got to keep your wits about you. Feel horrible for the guy because this is unfortunately, that guy could come out and be a closer next year and set the single season record for saves and save 100 games, and Philly fans will still remember him for this one moment. Unfortunately, that's a terrible way to look at it. Because look, if the Phillies find a way to win that game, then they're coming home for a game 5, and you never know. You never know.
Right.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I do want to say I love the way Rob Thompson handled it.
Yeah.
I love that they showed him some grace at the end there, and
Yeah.
his teammates too. Nick Castellanos, put his arm around him when he was walking off the field. Anybody that's played baseball knows that when you make an error, whether it's a regular season game or a playoff game or whatever the case may be, it's crushing. You feel horrible
Yeah.
to let your team down in any given moment when you make a blunder like that. So I respect what they did, man. It was really classy that they did that, and hopefully they can build on that. Hopefully they can, look back and motivate them going into next season. But that was as tough as a way to go out as I've seen in a long time.
By the way, the Dodgers win that series, and I believe Ohtani was 1 for 18, something of that nature.
Scary.
It's scary.
It's
It's very
scary.
scary, very scary. And so we're wrapping up the LDS series, of course. Cubs, Brewers. The Cubs come back, kind of make a series, get it to 5 games. I thought Game 5 was a little anticlimactic after Game 5 of Tigers Mariners, but the Brewers are again, a team that I personally underestimated going into the season, and then even during the season, I thought this is not real. They're not going to last. They look like the team now. I mean, you said that the Dodgers, they look a little vulnerable. They're beatable. The Brewers maybe could get that done. We'll get in that in a minute. But as far as this series with the Cubbies, I thought the Brewers were the better team. I thought the Cubs, being at home, they played well at home, but that didn't seem to travel for them. So, yeah, your thoughts overall on that series?
It was a series of home teams, man. Milwaukee won their 2 home games and emphatically, and then Chicago won their 2 home games, um, and then they went back to Game 5, and Milwaukee won that game. And so, again, very evenly matched series. These teams know each other very well. They beat up on each other all season. The storyline of Craig Counsell and Milwaukee and Pat Murphy. I enjoyed it. I'm not necessarily a fan of either team, even though I do love the average guy, the above average guys. I'm sorry, for Milwaukee.
Yeah.
I've become a little bit of a Brew Crew guy here at the end of the season now. I just appreciate a small market team like that continuing to win, and it speaks volumes to the game of baseball when you look at a team like Milwaukee, who's again, they have a lot to prove here still, but they did win that series in spending pennies on a dollar, and you have the New York Mets spending $500 million and falling short to make the postseason. So I think it's interesting for baseball, and it creates great transparency. Again, it's just a phenomenon of how different front offices approach the playoffs. But for Milwaukee, man, I watched this. I watched every game, and I'll be honest with you, man. I think they've got a good club. I think they have a star in Churio. People often forget Christian Yelich. He's been around a long time. He's a great player. Bryce Terang. Some of these average Joes that we joke around about, they've got a pretty good team up and down that order. Contreras is an excellent catcher. They're kind of I'm buying into them, and it's so crazy because they let go of so many players in the last few years, and look at some of these guys that left. Jason, Willie Adames, right? He went to San Francisco. They actually paid him a bunch of money. Look at his stats.
Yeah,
nothing crazy, man.
yeah.
Look at Devin Williams. He went to the Yankees. It was a rocky season for him.
Yeah,
and look at the closer they have now in Milwaukee. The kid is lights out. He's almost throwing 100 miles an hour. So they know what they're doing in Milwaukee. Again, will it amount to a trophy? We'll see.
Yeah.
But, credit to the front office. And you know what? I'm going to throw one other thing in there. David Stearns, the general manager from Milwaukee, he left Milwaukee as this boy genius, right? Everyone was so high on David Stearns, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I know that the Mets had a great season last year, and not to harp on the Mets here, but Milwaukee's just fine. If not, they're better than ever.
Yeah, true.
And then I'll add one more. Craig Counsell, right? Chicago Cubs just literally wrote him a blank check. Said, "Hey, come to Chicago."
Yep.
And he went. And you know what? I don't blame him. I don't blame him one bit. I know he's got ties to Milwaukee. He played as a player. He was a manager. He had some success there. He finally won a series with the Cubbies. But I think this is just about Milwaukee, man. They know what they're doing. Those guys in the front office, and you got to give them credit. And, you as a neutral, you become a fan of it. And you say to yourself, like, man, if Milwaukee can do this, why can't anybody? So yeah, I think they're a dangerous team. They're, they, again, not too much star power, but I think they're going to fight LA and make it a really good series. And, we'll see what happens there. But man, hats off to Milwaukee.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with everything you just said. It is. It's hard to make the argument against it when people say, "Well, Major League Baseball is terrible because the teams that spend the most money win all the time." It's hard to argue against that when you look at like the last 20 years. The World Series champion has largely been in the top 10, although I would argue very few of them have been number 1 or even in the top 5. I think it's a little overblown. It's just that a lot of those teams are also the best managed teams, like the Dodgers. They have good management. The Brewers, though, are doing what I've always thought baseball was about. Build a roster that wins ball games, however you have to do it. Whatever fits your ballpark, whatever fits your budget. Moneyball, if you want to call it that, however you want to say it. The Brewers and the Guardians to some extent, they do it as well. These are small, quote unquote, small market teams with lower budgets that just know how to evaluate players. You don't have to spend out the entire blow out the budget to win. You really don't if you have smart baseball people, and clearly the Brewers have smart baseball people in that organization. Like you said, even when Stearns leaves, they're still doing it. So it's the scouting, it's the management team, it's the ownership, it's some combination of all that keeps that franchise going. They are the last team I would have picked to win the Central, except for Pittsburgh, and certainly would not have had them in the LCS. So kudos to the Brewers for sure.
Yeah, and like I said, it's almost like that Moneyball motto.
Yeah,
Like let's dump guys who are going to cost us a ton of money that
yeah,
we just can't afford and we don't want to buy. The argument is how far is it going to take you? Back when that Moneyball, back in the early 2000s when the Athletics embraced that philosophy, obviously it was a cool story and all, but it's 2025 and Milwaukee's got one of the lowest payrolls in baseball and they've lost some superstars, certainly Corbin Burns, Willie Adames and so on. So, and then, you look at Vaughn, a midseason pickup, a guy that maybe nobody's heard of that was on the White Sox, and he's
yeah.
over here, he's hitting home runs.
How happy is that guy?
How happy is he? So, you know,
Yeah,
the above average Joes, man, go Brew Crew, go.
yeah. It would be great to see them or Seattle to some extent. They're not a super high payroll team. The Blue Jays are a pretty high payroll team, but
Yeah, they are.
the Brewers winning it all, or the Mariners it wouldn't put that narrative to bed that you have to spend a lot of money. But on the opposite side, if the Dodgers or the Blue Jays do win this thing, even with the Brewers' success, even with the Guardians' success, the Tigers, the Mariners, the only thing people that are kind of casual baseball fans will remember is, oh, the Dodgers won it again because they spent all that money. So I think it'd be super great for baseball if the Brewers could pull it off, or the Mariners. All right. So with that being said, let's talk LCS. We have caught up, and actually, as we record now, we're just a few minutes away from Game 1 of the American League Championship Series. So we'll start there. The Blue Jays hosting the Mariners, two teams. It's been a while for the Blue Jays. No World Series appearance since 1993. I believe only one maybe LCS appearance. Their last one was in 2016. And the Mariners, of course, trying to get that monkey off their back. The only active franchise not to have reached a World Series. I believe both these teams entered the league the same year together as expansion teams also. So this is just a really fun matchup to me as a baseball fan. No dog in the fight as far as, this being my teams, but excited to watch this. This should be really good baseball. As I mentioned earlier, maybe a little disadvantage for the Mariners playing that late game Friday night, depleting their pitching staff. I believe they're going with Miller in Game 1 tonight against Gossman. So advantage Blue Jays, but this is baseball, man. Things can happen, and if the Mariners steal Game 1, then it's series on right off the bat. So your thoughts on the American League Championship Series?
Yeah, Jason, I think 1977, they actually
Yeah, that was a good
you
year.
nailed that. Yeah, 19. Yeah.
The year I was born. It's a great year.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. There's some parallel. But hey, look, no, like you said, Game 1 advantage Jays. They're rested, super rested. I don't know if the Mariners have still come back down from that walk off. 48 hours ago or so, or not even 48 hours ago. So look, hey, this is a matchup. I think these two teams are very evenly matched. I think there's depth across both lineups, top to bottom. I think advantage Seattle in the rotation. Obviously, like you said, they're definitely depleted as far as the rotation goes. I mean, they had Logan Gilbert and Castillo pitching in the extra innings against Detroit. But hey, look, Bryce Miller gets a start tonight. I think nobody's probably expecting Seattle to win, but it's baseball. You never know what can happen. They're riding high. Maybe they can steal one here tonight. Um, I do want to say one thing with Toronto. I think beating New York for them was so big that I don't know if, maybe it's gotten to their heads a little bit. I don't want to take anything away from that. But beating the Yankees was like, the way that they celebrated after that series, it was
Yeah,
like,
that's
it's like
true.
they had won the World Series.
That's true.
Um, but I think these two teams are very evenly matched. I expect a long series. I think advantage Seattle in the rotation. And I think advantage Seattle throughout the course of the series, even offensively. Um, I like them a little bit more. Again, I'm doubting the Jays again. Right? That's not good. They're gonna. I'm never gonna hear the
Hey,
end of it from my
look,
friends in
man,
Canada.
you've been on a roll with the picks, so I'm tempted to
Yeah,
just go with your gut on these things because you've hit the nail on the head more often than not so far, buddy.
yeah, man. I'm leaning towards Seattle. There's a little bit more cushion now that we got a 7 game series. So if you lose
Yeah.
a game or two, you don't necessarily have to go freak out. Not that I want Seattle to go down 0-2, but
Well, they get
um,
Woo back. Woo's back on the.
yeah, that's huge, man. That's huge. That's
Castillo, correct me if I'm wrong. Castillo only pitched like 15 pitches, so
yeah,
yeah. So I mean, I don't think they're as bad off starting pitching wise as maybe we think, but definitely a little bit of a disadvantage. But like you said, it's a long series now. Done with these 5 game series. So yeah, it should be interesting to see if they could steal game one or even game two. I think that's huge for them.
yeah, and look, I think they're again the fan base is starving for them to go far here. I think they're going to feed off of it. I'm looking at Julio. I'm looking at Cal, Randy Rosarina. These guys need to be more patient at the plate. I'm watching their at bats, and they're just super aggressive. And they face Scooble, so I guess it doesn't really matter who you are. Nobody really hits Scooble, but
Yeah.
I think they have to be a little bit more disciplined at the plate going into this series against Toronto. Um, I think Naylor's been awesome. He was the one kind of shining star in Game 5. So he
Absolutely.
seems like he's pretty locked in right now. Gino Suarez, I think somebody's gonna have to call him and wake him up. I think he's asleep right now.
He's
I'm
taking some
watching
bad
his.
at bats. He took some really bad at bats, had some bad swings. He's trying to murder the ball every swing, which is what he does. I mean, that's kind of who he is. I think Rosarena needs to have a good series. I think he needs to have a big series to help Seattle out. One of those two guys, maybe not both, but one of those two guys, Suarez or Rosarena, they really need to produce because Raleigh can't do it by himself. Rodriguez can't do it by himself. And then the guys you don't expect, maybe the Polanco's, the Rivas's, the little guys, they can certainly contribute. Polanco was huge in that last series. So it should be a lot of fun, man. I think it's going to be good baseball to watch.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, Gino, he's a feast or famine guy.
Yeah.
He doesn't hit for a ton of contact. He's a lot of swing and miss, and sometimes he connects and the ball goes 430 feet. But yeah, I think I think this team is poised to take the next step. I like the Mariners in 6 against Toronto.
Ooh, and 6.
Blue
Man,
Jays fans, don't yell at me. Don't
oh
you've been
boy.
beating us up enough as it is. But
Rough on
I
me.
think it's been a great series. I think it's going to be a great series. I think both series are honestly, as a baseball fan, I think it's awesome. I
Yeah.
really do. You got the Dodgers who, unless you're an LA fan, you probably aren't cheering for them, and you're probably tired of them, like most of us.
Right.
Um, but I think this is a great Final Four here. But I like Seattle in 6, and I think in large part due to the to starting pitching.
Yeah, look, I can't argue against that, especially given your track record so far with picks this postseason. I'm taking the Jays in 7, but my heart is kind of pulling for the Mariners. So we're really gonna piss off Blue Jay fans tonight. Why not? Not
Yeah.
that I dislike the Blue Jays. I've been on their bandwagon all year. I just want to see these city as a baseball guy, as a baseball fan without my team in this thing. I want to see these cities that haven't got to experience this. I mean, how many Brewers fans alive now watched them in their one World Series back in '82? And of course, Mariners fans have never seen it. So I want to see experience that. The only thing I thought about, and I think I said this to you and when we were messaging the other day, as great as a Brewers Mariners World Series would be, the loser of that series, bless their hearts. You finally get there, so I'll just throw that out there. Let's take a tangent real quick because I wanted to talk to this, and I really wanted Bruce's opinion on this, so we'll get it on the next episode. You talked about the celebration the Blue Jays had. I don't want to be a party pooper, but celebrating with champagne and putting the plastic up and going crazy after every series seems a little excessive. You celebrate winning the division or clinching a playoff spot or a wild card, then you win the wild card, then you win the division series, and every single time you're popping champagne, and especially for a team like the Phillies or the Dodgers who've been there and done that. But the Phillies, particularly, I thought, what are you celebrating? You've been here before. You've won the DS before. You've won the division before. Your season is defined by whether you win the World Series or not, whether you like that or not. Yankees, Phillies, Dodgers, at least those three teams, your season was going to be defined by winning or not winning the World Series. What are you celebrating? I think there comes a point, if you're the Phillies especially, where you had to say, look, guys, let's go in there, let's have a couple beers, let's high five, let's be happy. But this isn't this was not the purpose. I just want to get your take on these every round celebrations. It seems a little bit crazy to me.
It's a tradition, man. They've been doing it for, I don't know. I've been around for 34 years, and I've been seeing it for.
You had to win the division, and there was only one team. So it made sense back then. You play 162 games. You're the only team standing at the end. Okay, pop the champagne. You accomplished something. But now 12 teams get in the playoffs. I'm not saying I'm against it necessarily. Fun is fun, and that's fine. I think there are certain teams, though, that you should say, hey, look, guys, we hadn't handled our business yet. What are we celebrating? For a team like the Mariners, hell yes. Pop the champagne every single series. Enjoy the hell out of it. But Phillies and Dodgers and even the Yankees, come on, guys,
Well, I'll give you one. I when the Dodgers beat the Reds, I'm not sure that defies getting, the partying. No shade on the Reds, but
yeah,
I think again anything can happen in baseball, but I don't think anybody was surprised when the Dodgers swept Cincinnati.
No.
So popping champagne and partying, it's a tradition. I think a lot of it has to do with just the grind of baseball, how much of a grind it is to win these games, and when you get over the hump and you win a series. It's a gratifying feeling. I agree with you. I don't think it warrants, I don't want to solo Toronto. I know we're pissing off our Jays faithful here enough this evening, but,
yeah.
but, for Toronto, it's been a long time, man. So, beating the Yankees, that's a good feeling. And if you saw on TBS post game with David Ortiz and Vladdy Jr. The Yankees lose. It got to it was like, all right, man. It's like, I get it. You beat the Yankees, enjoy it. It was a phenomenal performance, but I think Toronto has bigger aspirations than that. But yeah, I hear you. Have a couple beers, enjoy yourself. Maybe dance a little bit. Go out. And with your teammates and but yeah, it's a little cringe. It's a little cringe.
I think it's team dependent. Like I said, the Mariners, absolutely. Brewers, enjoy every second of it. Some of these teams that their season is defined by it. And by the way, when do we reach a point? Because you mentioned this earlier with the Yankees, they don't seem to be that close. I mean, I know they've been in the postseason. They were in the World Series last year, but we talked about they were overmatched in that World Series. When does it reach a point where beating the Yankees is not that big? You're just beating that logo that holds so much tradition, and rightfully so.
Right.
But, Blue Jays, come on, man. You got 2 more steps left to go. You beat the Yankees, great. Don't act like you just won the Super Bowl because you beat the Yankees.
Yeah.
Right? So, anyway, we'll leave that there. I can't wait to get Bruce's thoughts on that. But,
yeah,
go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, I'm a baseball purist, and I love watching celebrations and interactions after the games, and I watch all the post game stuff, and it's really cool to me. But the Toronto celebration did stick out again, and I don't want to I love my fellow Canadians up north, but
we're gonna get banned from Canada for sure.
It was excessive a bit, but hey, congrats, man, and we'll see
Yeah,
what happens next.
see what happens. All right, so the last series we need to talk about the preview here of the NLCS gets started on Monday night. Dodgers and Brewers, of course. Brewers home field advantage for whatever that's worth. They earned it, and this series for me, let's just piss off the Dodger fans too. I'm going to pull for the Brewers. I will say this: I love Freddie Freeman. I'm a Braves guy. I love Freddie. I love Shohei. I know Shohei gets a lot of hate. I really don't know why. He seems like the nicest guy on the planet. I guess people just get tired of hearing about him, which is fair. But he's a unicorn. We haven't seen a player like him since Babe Ruth. And then Mookie Betts. Who doesn't like Mookie Betts? Maybe Boston Red Sox fans. I don't know.
Right.
They're just a likable team. I wouldn't have said that about the Dodgers a few years ago. But the Brewers, man, we talked about it. They're the team that you want to see succeed. They're the every guy, the average Joe who's making 7-8 million a year. But we won't talk about that. They're the team that I think, like you said, most of the planet is pulling for in this thing. I'm going to be a skeptic and say the Dodgers pull this thing out in 7 games. But man, I really like to see the Brewers get this thing done. Is there a matchup in this series that you think super favors the Brewers that can be the difference here? And if you do, what is that?
It's tough to say. I think the Dodgers are top to bottom better team. I don't think that's debatable too much. Milwaukee won more games in the regular season. Obviously, they had the most wins out of anybody. Again, I think Churio could be a headache. He's hampered by an injury, though. I don't know if you picked up on that, Jason. He's kind of got that hamstring injury. He's kind of, you can tell him in the outfield, he's not as elusive. Matchup wise, I don't know. It's tough. I mean, the Dodgers are loaded. They're an all-star team. They, in my opinion, haven't even played the best baseball this postseason, and they only lost once. So and then you mentioned with Ohtani, he didn't even hit. Excuse me, in the Philly series. So, and I'm with you, man. I big fan of Freddie Freeman. Big fan of Mookie Betts. I think Teoscar Hernandez is a thorn. He's a tough guy to pitch to. He's another guy in that lineup, top to bottom. Even the manager, Dave Roberts, super good guy. He's been in the baseball community a long time. There's not a ton to really dislike with the Dodgers from a player perspective. I think it's the brand and maybe the payroll that ticks people off.
Absolutely.
So
Dave Roberts is a little annoying too, by the way. I'll just say that. Dave Roberts gets on my nerves a little bit. There's something about the guy. But as far as the players themselves, they just seem like a good group of guys. I just had to throw that in there. Something about Dave's face just really gets on my nerves. By the way, both these teams, Brewers home field advantage for what that's worth in baseball. Both these teams were exactly 52-29 at home. The Brewers were slightly better on the road this year, about 4 games better. So not sure you can glean anything from that. But the Brewers do seem to play well at home. They do have the home field. So if there is a game 7, they'll be at home. But I'll say this too, and I thought of this when you were talking about Mariners Tigers. I saw a stat right before that game, I believe leading into that game. So now it should be 47-47. In winner take all games, the home team in baseball playoff series is now 47-47. So we've always talked about home field advantage in baseball may not mean as much as in other sports. Certainly there are situations. You mentioned Wrigley. I remember as a kid that the Metrodome was a big advantage for the Twins. But other than that, it's really kind of a crapshoot. But obviously, if you're the Brewers, you'd rather have it than not. And if you can get off to say a 2-0 start on the Dodgers before you go to Dodger Stadium, that could be huge for Milwaukee.
Yeah, like I said, I haven't picked against the Dodgers this playoffs, but I'm going to pick Milwaukee blindly. But confidently. And I think there's something magical going on right now in Brew Crew land. I think some of these guys are just stepping up to the moment. And again, I think they're a talented group. I think they can pitch well. Love the manager. Murph, he's hilarious. And I think about, Bob Uecker and his impact in that organization for many years. I mean, who wasn't a fan of Bob Uecker? And I'm sure he's looking down right now and he's probably cracking a joke and laughing and smiling. And I'm taking Milwaukee. I think the Dodgers have some vulnerabilities in the bullpen. I know Sasaki emerged, and that's a concern, obviously. Somebody's got to beat him, Jason. Somebody has to beat them. It's very hard to repeat in Major League Baseball. It hasn't happened since the Yankees, I want to say.
Yankees, and no National League team has done it since the Big Red Machine in the mid 70s.
Right.
Yeah.
So history's against the Dodgers. And again, I think they're beatable. I think the Phillies kind of stumbled a bit those first two games in Philly when they just didn't produce. The meat of the order didn't produce. And I'm looking at guys like Churio and Bryce Terang and Christian Yelich and Contreras, and I think they're going to play over their heads, and I think Milwaukee's going to gut out the win over 7 games. And they have the home field advantage, like you said. It doesn't mean a whole lot, especially against the Dodgers. I mean, that basically means nothing against LA, right?
Yeah.
Those guys travel. But I'm going to take Milwaukee, and I'm going to say that we're going to have a Milwaukee-Seattle World Series.
Love it.
And one of these teams is going to crack the code, and one of these fan bases is going to celebrate like it's.
Can you imagine that parade in either city? Can you just imagine?
No.
The emotion of that.
No.
By the way, I don't know if you just heard that roar from our friends in Canada, but George Springer hits a leadoff home run in the bottom of the first to put the Blue Jays up 1-0 in game 1 of the ALCS. So we're getting a big finger from the Blue Jays fans, I'm sure. So, no, good stuff.
Love it.
It's time to go watch some postseason ball. So we're both basically picking against each other. You're going Mariners Brewers. I'm going – that's the series I want to see, by the way. I want to make that clear to our listeners and followers of the Facebook page. That's what I want to see. I said that a couple months ago. But I'm picking Dodgers Blue Jays with my head. I'm hoping you're right, buddy. I hope you continue your streak here of postseason picks. So we'll leave it there. Really good stuff, man. Recapping the postseason. We gave our predictions. We'll see how it goes. It's time to go watch your Mariners play in the American League Championship. Good luck. I may go break out my King Griffey Jr. jersey and throw it on for some good luck.
I got to pinch myself, man. I got to pinch myself. I don't know if it's real.
It's good stuff. It's great. Enjoy it. Have fun with it. Tonight, if they lose, big deal. They're tired. They had to make the flight out to Toronto. Opposite ends of Canada, I believe, if my geography is correct. So good luck to your Mariners, but we love you too, Toronto. We love you, Canada. We promise we're not anti-Canadian. I've been on the Jays bandwagon all year. But, Nico, thanks for the time. I do want to say as we wrap up, if you have a chance, folks, and you're listening to this podcast, please check out my new podcast. It's not new. It's connected to this one. It's on the same feed. It's all about a fan's journey. I just posted the first episode, and I'm going to talk about my journey as a baseball fan from childhood to current. And then also we're collecting stories from our followers and our listeners of their baseball fandom, and we're going to tell their stories on episodes as well. I've already collected several great stories, Nico, that I'm going to share here coming up, hopefully in an episode next weekend, some of them, and maybe have some of these folks on to tell their story as well. We'll get them on the show and have you on to tell yours as well. I know yours. We've told each other our stories before, but should be a fun time. So if you get a chance, check that out, folks. In between, enjoy the baseball, the postseason, and we will see you guys at the ballpark.
Casey was baseball mad, had the fever and had it bad, just to root for the hometown through every school, Katie Blue. On a Saturday, her young beau called to see if she'd like to go to see a show, but Miss Kate said no. I'll tell you what you can do. Take me out to the ball game. Take me out with the crowd. Oh, buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jack. I don't care if I never get back. Let me root for the whole.